this was an odd presentation to put together. Usually I just have slides, and I never ever use paper notes of any kind. I just kind of work off the slides. I show maps, and I show dates, and I show various images that really work. Now, this was a very strange presentation to put together because we're dealing with future, and we're dealing with internal things. So I always end up getting these really interesting titles for presentations, and it's partly my own fault. But we're putting this one together, and they said, you know, lots of people are doing cryptocurrency, lots of people are doing general liberty. You just have this new novel that's out, and you got some really interesting stuff in there. Let's put together a presentation on this, and how that, you know, all the topics and how they feed together. And I said, well, it's, you know, about really evolving, and since, you know, this is a show for crypto guys, you're really kind of learning how to hack your own soul. Okay, let's do it. Well, then I'm stuck with this title. I'm going, gee, how do I really do this well? This is a very strange, imagine trying to put together a presentation on this title. It's pretty rough. Anyhow, we have some really good stuff. So I'll just start with this. If I were to ask everyone in this room, and if I said to you, I want you to grok this, how many would know what I mean? Okay, not too many. So I'm going to give you an intro to hippiedom. Okay? Back in the 60s, there was a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. Good book. And the author introduced this concept of to grok. And it's a sci-fi book, so it comes from the Martian language. And to grok is to understand intuitively, to understand really deeply, not to analyze and compare with rules and you know, put mechanically A to B to C and get it, but to drink it in, to really understand it. So the things we're going to be talking about today, I want you to grok them. I want you to just turn off the analysis program and just understand, because I'm going to talk about some really interesting and different stuff. So turn off the analysis program, turn it back on tomorrow. And if you think I'm right or if you think I'm wrong, that's fine by me. But I want you to really drink this in and understand what I'm trying to say before you jump to the analysis routines. You know, Aristotle made this really interesting comment at one point. He says, the mark of an educated mind is to be able to retain a concept without agreeing with it. And that's the same idea I'm getting at. I want you to just take it in and understand the arguments that I'm making. Don't get worried about semantics. I use the word soul just because I don't have any better word to use. You know, sometimes that word gets kind of religiously murky, but I don't really have a better one. What are you going to say? The inner man, your core, the old Greeks had a word called nous, which was a pretty good one. So get the concept, not the container, all right? All right, what we're talking about today is actual evolution. What happens when you bring up this word evolution is people, they snap to these routines that I got. If you're, let's say, certain type of religious person, you maybe think evolution, you know, bad, I don't want it, nothing, you know, deny it, I don't even bother reading it to find out what's in there, it's just wrong. Or if you're some of these people that grab onto evolution, they use it as a weapon to slap the people they disagree with. I don't want to do either thing. I want to talk about actual evolution. I want to talk about actual humans actually becoming better, changing for the good. And the funny thing is, when you talk about that, people kind of tend to freak out. The people who promote the theory often don't like the idea of actual humans getting better. Anyhow, so this is what we're going to talk about. One of the things that you find out when you study this stuff is humans are actually more evolved than they would appear. And what I mean is this. We're living surrounded by fear sellers and sacrifice collectors. We're living in systems that feed off of our fears. The truth is that the current systems of governance, rulership, I like to say, doesn't matter. The current systems we live in require a populace that is confused, a populace that is intimidated, a populace that doesn't take time to really reason for themselves. People that move by inertia. My grandfather did it. My mom did it. This is the way people behave. This is what I've always seen. It must be right. And you keep following the person in front of you. The system requires that. Once a number of people start saying, wait a minute, why are we doing this? What's the reason behind it? Give me a reason. The system starts to fail. If you notice in every political campaign, when you get to the last week, right before the votes are cast, what are they doing? They're selling fear. They're not saying, oh, I have a plan and I'm going to point 1, point 2, point 3, and this is going to work such a way. They don't reason. They say, my opponent is scary as hell. He's going to, make your grandma eat cat food or whatever works best for that year. And this is what they work on because fear makes humans stupid. It does. 2 big things that make humans stupid is fear and grouping. Feeling like you're part of a herd rather than an individual. Okay? We're not stupid, but sometimes we act stupid. And it's because of these type of things. So humans are actually way more evolved than they think they are. One of the things that happens is this problem with compulsion. Compulsion kills compassion. So if you are compelled through taxes, your money is extorted from you by violence or threat, and taken from you for the purpose of helping the poor. Compassion is removed from you because when you see somebody who's actually poor and you reach in your own pocket to help them because you think they deserve it, because you give a damn, this changes them and it changes you. And for all of the arguments against the state, all the logical arguments, the technical arguments, the analysis arguments, everything we have, that the state has stolen this type of thing from us, that they've taken compassion from us, just made it a moot point. We don't even get to do it. We don't even get close. We never get to make the choice because the money's taken from us in the first place and we haven't got it to use. And they're doing it. They've taken over the compassion business. And the fact that they've stolen that from people like us, this is the big sin. It's the same thing that happens with regulation. The more things are regulated, the less we get to cooperate out of what's inside of us. Okay? When we are free, in other words, there's no one telling us what to do or what not to do, and when then we decide to cooperate, that this matters, that if we cooperate, we build a better world, we make things work, we get to bring food from here to there, then it's a choice we made, not one that was imposed on us, and that changes us. And that changes the people we work with. This builds benevolence into the world. And again, the fact that the state has stolen this, removed this, and said, we will regulate you for your safety. This is the sin again. This is their sin. Because it has stolen the best parts of our being, or some of the best parts of our being from us. And said, no, that's not for you, that's for us. And we're going to do it by compulsion, and you're going to make you do it because you're really not good enough to do it by yourself. This is their sin. All right. One of the ways you can see us evolving is the fact that open rulership is no longer acceptable in the West. What I mean is this. Up till the early 19th century, rulers believed they had the right to rule. The king, the prince. People might dislike what the king and prince did, but the ruled people pretty much agreed that the position of king was a legitimate position. And the king believed that he had a right to rule. After about 1820 or 1840, that was no longer true. You should read some of the passages from poets like Percy Shelley. Wonderful passages of how they're rejecting this. The king is just another, in Chicago language say schmuck. He's just another schmuck like the rest of us. And why are people building him all these grand palaces when they need that money for themselves? They live in a hovel. And why should they build this grand palace for this guy who does nothing of his own? And this poor man who's doing it lives in a hovel. This is wrong. And this is what was going on in Europe in the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s. There was the American Revolution in the 1770s. There was the French Revolution in the 1790s. Those were, big dramatic events. But in most of Europe, 1820, 1830, 1848, there were a whole rash of revolutions that went all across the continent. And this idea, people were finally getting over the idea that they deserved to be ruled, that they deserved to just plod along and live their life the way they always had. There's a great comment from an English Irish minister in 1830. He says, "Never was good times in England since the poor started to consider their situation." He says, before then, they jogged along with as little reflection as horses. So when people began to get out of this situation where they thought it was their role in life to be ruled, they said, well, we want to rule ourselves. And this is what we call democracy. Now, it hasn't really worked out that way because people are now ruling from behind the scenes, always under the guise of for your safety. We're doing this for you. We're doing this to provide you with a stable monetary system. We're doing this to provide you with safety from all the crazy people who want to kill you. All these things now are done in the guise of for us, for our safety. But open rulership is no longer acceptable. We have changed. Not as fast as some of us would like, not as well as many of us would like, but we have changed. This is no longer an acceptable thing. So, anyhow, let's continue because there's a lot more material to cover, and I don't have a tremendous amount of time. This one's going to be an interesting one for a lot of people to take. Evolved humans escape rule sets. Now, here's what I mean. Rules are fine. They're necessary for machines, for computers, for software. Rules are necessary. Rules are not necessary inside here. They're not. We are not machines. We are different. Okay? The comparisons are not particularly good between men and machines. We operate on different principles. A rule is binary. It's on, off, yes, no, 0, 1. We don't operate that way in our daily lives. Our communications are very, very rich. Let's say I'm going to go out to lunch with my friend. Well, I consider when he's eaten last, what he likes to eat, what's near to him, how's the traffic, how are the roads, is everything good at home, where do I want to eat, what would be good for me when I sit down to eat with my friend. I'm considering his attitude, I'm considering how he's feeling, I'm considering what's going on in his life. All of us do this. We do this without even thinking about it. I consider dozens of things about my friend. A rule only gives me one. On, off, yes, no. But real human communication is immensely rich. I know a young anthropologist who is short on money, as many anthropologists are. And she told me the other day, she says, I go to the gym every day, but I haven't had a gym membership for 6 months. Okay, well, that's interesting. What do you mean? She says, I study this stuff. I study nonverbal communications. I study what happens with people. She says, and I know how to walk into the gym and look like I belong and just walk in and they think that I belong there. And she walks in, hey, how you doing? What's going on? All right. And is in a hurry and gets back there and, Mike's waiting for me to work out. And when she leaves, she says, if somebody happens sometimes, as they do, to think, she'll pick up her cell phone and go, listen, Bob, we really need to get this done. How you doing? So she knows how to do this because we communicate in all sorts of ways. The way we walk, the way we stand, the way we present ourselves, the kind of clothes we wear. Humans communicate very, very richly. So to make things mechanical and rule-based. Wonderful machine for machines, immensely limiting to us. So getting away from rules is really an important sort of thing. And if you notice, all of the great disasters of human history are not carried out by the Stalins and the Maos and the Hitlers of the world. They order things, but the people who actually do it are thousands of individual people who are doing what? Following rules. Because rules remove responsibility from the equation. They remove your mind, they remove judgment, they remove humanity from the equation because you're just following a rule. Not good enough for us. Fine for a machine. Fine for certain unusual applications in life. Not good inside here. Do we really need a rule? So I see one of these gentlemen walking down the street, and I come up behind him and hit him on the head with a club and take his money. Do we really need a rule to tell us that this is a bad thing to do? Of course not. We don't need rules to tell us that most of the things in life are wrong. So why don't we operate on the rich way that humans do, rather than, I've got a rule for this, and it's all very mechanical and very cold and connecting A to B to C. Again, great for machines. That's not what we are. We're more than that. We operate richly. So, evolved people get away from rules. I want to give you a passage here I want to read to you. And this is something we came up with in the newsletter. And I want you to listen to this. It says, being by nature self-referential, which we are, we always refer to ourselves. I mean, we have conversations with ourselves all the time. If you're sitting here saying, oh, that's a good idea, who are you talking to? You're talking to yourself. We do this all the time. We don't think about it, but we talk to ourselves constantly. So, being by nature self-referential, you judge yourself every time you act. Treating others like you wish to be treated, you define yourself as a benefit in the world. Treating others in the way you wouldn't like, you define yourself as a hazard in the world. And even though you may not think about it all that time, somewhere you know. It says, there's no escape from this arrangement, though men attempt it by ceding their will to rules. It's the rule's fault. It's not mine. It's a rule. I'm not responsible. It's the rule. Okay? We're giving away our will to the rules. It says, obedience to a rule, however, opposes the self-reference that produces all the goodness and creativity in the world. However much you lay your will at the feet of a rule, you rob yourself and others of that much happiness, and by obeying the rule, you place your will in the service of an inferior morality. And you contribute it to the darkening of mankind. Okay? I'd read that again 2 or 3 times if we had time, because I think it's really important. But try just to hold that concept. Disagree tomorrow if you want. But I want you to try to hold that concept. All right, we're doing okay on time. Yeah. This is big. Once we get past all this fear and all of this intimidation and thinking in rules very mechanically, evolved people learn to really enjoy what they are. We are, by far, the most amazing, incredible creatures that we've ever seen. Nothing compares to us. I don't care how you want to. People freak out about this sometimes. Oh, there's war in there. Forget it. Stop it. That's focusing on negativity to an insane degree. Why? Because that's what works to control humans, and that's what people who want to control humans have worked on for all these years. I mean, turn on CNN. It's a fear delivery system. That's what it is. Okay? That's what it is, all of them. They're fear delivery systems. So, fear degrades us, and we shouldn't do that anymore. Think about all the things we're afraid of. Terrorists and whatever, all the things that are, that you're going to get killed and shot and everything else. How much actual violence do we actually have to deal with in our daily lives? What's the percentage? I mean, what's a real percentage of the hours of your life? How many hours have you had to deal with actual violence? 0.001%? 0.01%? 1%? Almost never. Almost never. Now, look, it's a messed up world. It does happen on occasion, and hopefully you're prepared for it and you do okay. But it's a fraction of 1% of the whole. And yet, we are taught to build our entire world around things that we're afraid of. How about building a world based upon what we are and what we can do, what we can create in the world? Let me give it to you this way. Inanimate things, rocks, hills, whatever, water, their general nature is that of entropy. For the physicists in here, you like this. Their general nature is that of entropy. Things decay, things even out. The hots get colder, the colds get hotter, everything reaches a median and the stars wear out and the universe ends. Entropy. This is the nature of rocks and hills and water. The nature of animals, the nature of life, and this is probably a pretty good definition of life, is that which reverses entropy. We have plants. They take chemicals in the soil. They take sunlight, all things that are inanimate, all things that tend to entropy. The sun's eventually going to burn out. They take light from the sun. They take ingredients from the earth. They take water, and they concentrate it. And they build these wonderful corn, wheat, soy, oats, all the things we eat, beautiful flowers. This is reversing entropy. It's taking all these things that tend to disorganize and fall apart and turning it into something useful, beautiful, necessary for us. Okay, it's a reversing of entropy. And like I say, I think that's a fairly decent definition for life itself, whatever life actually is. Humans are the only known creatures in the universe that can reverse entropy willfully. We are different than everything else. The stalk of corn can grow corn. It can reverse entropy in that way. And it's really, really good and really, really useful, but that's all it can do. An orchid can make a beautiful flower that's very nice, but that's all it can do. We can choose whatever we want to create. We can reverse entropy willfully. There's any number of choices. I can take materials and some metal and rubber and make computers, or I can make cars, or I can build wonderful buildings like this. I can create lights. I can create heating and cooling systems that set us free from drudgery. We've done all these things. We are the most amazing creatures that we've ever seen anywhere. Hopefully there's something better out in the universe somewhere that we can learn from, but we're it. We are way better. So when all the negativity involves that much of human life, and we are way better than anything else we can see. We have a right to exist. We don't have to earn it. We have it by our nature because we can reverse entropy willfully. We're magic in the universe. Do you understand? We are magic in the universe. I know most of us walk around most of the time with a highly cultivated sense of inferiority. We walk down the street and say, oh, that guy's taller than I am. Oh, he's richer. Yeah, well, you know, that one's prettier than me. Whatever. We do this, but we shouldn't. We are amazing creatures, and we should think of ourselves, go through our daily lives thinking about what we are. I can do this. I can do this. I'm capable of doing this. I'm capable of a dozen things that I don't even have the time to do. We're magic in the universe. And we need to think of ourselves that way. And when we do, we stop arranging our lives built upon what we fear, which comprises a fraction of 1% of our lives, and start building our lives around what we are, what we can do, which comprises the vast majority of our lives. I'm going to read a passage from the book that began this discussion. And I want you just, again, to grok this. I want you just to get it, to listen to it and soak it in. It says, we already know the general feeling of the evolved life. It's the same feeling we had when we used our own wills to do things that we knew were good, when we went against the grain to defend people under attack, when we helped the abandoned deserving, and when we forgave sincerely. That feeling. You know the feeling I'm talking about? When somebody is being treated badly and it's wrong and everyone else is doing it, and you gather up your courage and say, wait. This is not right. I know there's 50 of you and there's only one of me. But this guy, he didn't do anything wrong. You're treating him unfairly. Do you know that feeling when you get done? It's a good feeling. When you forgive somebody sincerely and get rid of the bitterness that's in you. This is what we're built for. Okay? Said, we get a euphoric satisfaction from those experiences, and what we haven't realized, however, is that they were the actual integration of life into the world. The insertion of life into the universe by the action of our own wills. Okay? I'd like to just leave you, a little quiet music and, meditate on that for 5 minutes. And, okay, this is, let's see. Tell me what time it is. There we go. Okay, good. We're going to have time for Q&A, I'm pretty sure. I'm passing that. Now, this is the big one. And when I say how to hack your soul, this is where it's coming in now. Love is something that people misconstrue in so many ways. The ancient Greeks had several words for love. And I think that was a really good thing. It's a shame we don't really have that in English. I'm not sure about Czech. But we really don't have it because there's sexual desire. I mean, it's what keeps the species going, and none of us are complaining about it. Which is, fine. But it's not really love. It's something else. Love may be mixed in with it, and it should be. Hopefully it is. But it's a different sort of thing. Then there's the thing where we say, oh, I love that car. Oh, I really love that car. That's not what I'm talking about either. It's fine. Nothing wrong with it. But that's not what we're talking about. The love I'm talking about is a desire to bless, a hunger to bless, to help, to contribute, to make somebody or something better. This is the feeling I'm talking about. And it's one of those things that it sounds we call it in the States, we call it airy-fairy. It just sounds, oh yes, popsicles and unicorns and prancing on, the hills with flowers and everything is so. No. That's not what I'm talking about. Real love, and I mean really loving, is really demanding. Because when you do, all of a sudden you start getting slapped in the face with all the little bitternesses and pettinesses that you're holding, and you have to deal with them. And what I mean by actually loving is, I like to think of it this way and explaining it this way. Pick somebody here, one of the gentlemen over here. In what we call a different life, had I been born in a different place and time, he might have been my brother. He might have been my uncle. If our ages were offset the correct way, he could have been my son, and I would love him with all my heart. Where we're born, when we're born, are just purely accidental. None of us get to pick. We just find ourselves somewhere. In the same way, a young lady over here could have been my sister. In a different life, could have been my mom. In a different life, could have been my wife. And I'd love her with all my heart. I can feel that way about everybody who could have been in that situation. And when we begin to feel this, and we see people as, this could have been my neighbor. This could have been my uncle. This could have been my husband, my wife, my daughter, my son, my niece, my nephew. And begin to look at other people that way, benevolently. It changes you. And it's something we can do. It's not particularly hard. We're just not in the habit of thinking that way. We're not in the habit of doing that. I suggest at some point you find yourself a nice little spot. A train station's a great place. and get yourself a coffee or whatever you like to drink. And just sit there and try to meditate on this. And watch the people walking by. That could have been my sister. And look at her. You can't do it perfectly, but try to see what's important to this person. How are they living their life? What do they care about? What's bothering them? What are they happy about? And just pick them. And it's not hard. We just never do it. And we're fully capable of doing it. So this is what I'm talking about, actually loving. Not some advanced concept. And it's very hard. And I'll give you an example of the depth of this difficulty. I don't like picking on Christians because a lot of people do these days, and I find it barbaric. But I'll pick on them this time because it makes a good example. I have a lot of dear friends that are very serious Christians, and you have this conversation with them and you say, in the New Testament, there are all these passages where they talk about love, walking in love, love one another. Jesus says, you have all these commandments that you've heard about, but I have one. I got one that I'm going to give you. That's it, only one. Is you love one another like I've loved you. That's it. That's the one. So you bring this to I'll tell you a story. I brought one of it to a friend of mine who's a good man. And I said, rather than arguing about doctrine, which certain types of Christians do endlessly, rather than trying to figure out the secret meanings of all these various things, Christians should really walk in love and just major on that, because that's the whole thing. Just we really major on that and spend our time, energy doing that. Yeah, well, the scripture does say that, but, it also says that, we know the love of God through Christ, and so therefore we should, maybe teach all men and bring them to Christ, and that's what we should do. And they go right back to doctrine, because loving is hard. Once you start to actually live this way and think this way, all of the little things that we have inside of us that we haven't cleared out yet, they pop back up and slap you in the face. The little bitterness, the little envies, the little slights that you worry about. It's all crap. It's all trivia. It's all ephemera. It doesn't really matter. And when you really start to try to love, all this stuff comes back up at you. Now again, the great line in the New Testament is, he that loves knows God. He that doesn't love doesn't know God. And yet it's very difficult to get Christians to take this seriously because it's hard. But when we do, it changes us. There's a really fundamental and very important factor in human life that we don't really recognize very well, and that is our assumptions. Assumptions are deep beliefs. What do we presume is true? What do we just kind of take for granted inside of our hearts, if you will? What's right and what's wrong? Is this right? Is this wrong? We don't really analyze it. We don't come to a reasoned conclusion. We just, I'm this kind of person. I'm this kind of person. I don't do that. I do this. I assume that the people will behave a certain way. The world is a certain way. A lot of people assume the world is all very dark, and they can't get past that. Even if you give them chapter and verse and everything else, they can't get past it because they assume it, and they've assumed it for too long. These assumptions, the deep beliefs that we rarely consider, think of them as like a crucible in which our thoughts form. They color everything we think. They color everything we believe. And we very seldom examine them. Now here's the thing. I'm going to read you a passage, from this book we began on. And this is a passage that's set 200-300 years in our future. And again, I want you to grok this. I want you just to soak it in and think about it. It says, "It began to dawn upon them that love had been the simple path to human development, that had been with them the whole time. And they found one way after another to misconstrue it, to overlook it. They had confused love with sex and misconstrued it as various hungers. And so their minds detoured around what it actually was, a desire to bless, a hunger to bless." The desire to bless had been the path to improvement that didn't require a blazing intellect. That didn't require endless hours of study and painful displays of devotion. Authentic love acted directly upon the human core and upgraded it naturally. But they had missed that fact, and it took them some time to accept it. Soon enough, however, they understood what it was about love that made this true, that it carried inside of itself the most potent of assumptions. The desire to bless assumes that we are able to bless. So, assumptions, things we take for granted, could either set walls around their core, their heart, their soul, however we describe this, or else they could draw upon it. Okay? By assuming the ability to bless, they triggered authentic development from the inside out. Love, even ignoring the other virtues it created, would have grown humanity out of darkness long before, simply because of this assumption, and had been available equally to all of them. And they hadn't seen it. So I will close here. Thank you very, very much, and I know we have time for Q&A. Beautiful, good time.
Have you heard of nonviolent communication? Because I find it very much interconnected with the concept of love as you described it, and the empathy and so on. And what do you think of it?
I'll tell you what I think of it. Oops, wrong way. I took this part out because it was simply too much for one presentation. And what Marshall Rosenberg called nonviolent communication, I called dominance speech. Same basic idea. It's a very important concept. For everyone else who is not familiar, the concept is called nonviolent communication. Was created by a gentleman, Marshall Rosenberg, no relation that I'm aware of, who passed away about a year ago, a year and a half maybe now. And it's too much to explain, right? It needs really its own session, and it was too much to put in the middle of this presentation. It was overload. But it's a very important concept. To be very brief, we have learned through time, and mostly by being dominated, rulers of whatever type, large institutions that dominate the way we behave, we've been taught to not pay attention to things we need and to skip right past them. You notice when you get in an argument with somebody, rather than trying to solve the problem at hand, you get enough information and you jump to a conclusion. Oh, he's just this, and he's just that. Makes no sense when you think about it. We're jumping right past the conclusion. We're jumping right past fixing the situation. We're calling the other guy an ass. And what he's going to do is call you an ass. And pretty soon you're arguing about what each other, well, you're this, you're that. And rather than actually solving the problem. So nonviolent communications is a very important thing. It was just too much for one presentation.
Hello. What's your view on Ayn Rand's definition of love? That love is involuntary response to person's virtue if you are virtuous.
I think she's wrong. I really respect Ayn Rand's work. It's been very important to me. Whatever. Whoops. There. I was going to put that up. That's the book this stuff came from. Ayn Rand was very important to me, but I think she had emotional limitations. She had wounds, and they affected some of the things she wrote. And a lot of the things where I think I disagree with her, there is some point there that she has. I mean, she was a very bright and thoughtful person. And when you get bright and thoughtful humans trying, they almost always come up with good stuff. So I don't think of love that way. I think love is something that comes out of our core. And it's, again, on this assumption that we are able. I think it's, as I say, a desire to bless. That's the way I look at it.
It was such a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What do you think of natural law? Did you hear about it?
Yeah, I know. Depending on people define natural law their own way, in different ways. But I'm a huge fan of the concept. I don't know how it's done in Europe, but in the United States, in the English law system, we have this concept of negative rights and positive rights, and I don't want to explain the whole thing, but the one that I prefer is where you say humans should be free to do whatever they want so long as they don't hurt anybody else. And depending how people define natural law, I think it's very, goes right along with that idea very well, and I like that a great deal.
Okay, I have a question if no one else has. So every path starts with a first step. What do you think is a first step that people can take towards this evolution that we don't usually take?
That we don't. Well, I like the one that I talked about earlier, where you pick a day, pick half a day, and just sit somewhere and watch people go by and try to look at them as if this could have been my uncle. This one could have been my neighbor. How would I feel towards them? It's my uncle. I know his strengths. I know his failures. I know where he's done well. I know where he's had difficulty. I have compassion for this man. I think that's a wonderful place to start. The other thing is to pay attention, and just as a daily thing, pay attention to the things you assume. In other words, I see this. That's wrong. That's a bad idea. Well, stop. What am I assuming? What am I assuming about what's going on? What am I assuming about what I'm seeing? And pay attention to those things. It's little things. It's little changes of attitude that make the difference, and it's consistency, and really comes down to self-honesty. Just be really honest with yourself, and why am I thinking this way? Why am I paying attention to this? Why am I not paying attention to that? Why do I feel like I don't want to do this even though I know logically it's better for me? Don't just feel bad or give in or whatever. Think about it. Write it down. Make a note to yourself. It's not hard. And think about it. Next time you have a free hour, how come I know I should do this, but I'm not doing it, and what is it and why? And come up with answers. And so long as you do that, even if you come up with wrong answers, at least you've got the process going of knowing how to analyze yourself and finding out your weaknesses, finding out your strengths, and doing something about them. It's not hard.
Any other questions?
Hi, and thank you. You talked about evolution and seeing the best in all the other people, but isn't it a little bit counter-evolutionary? Because people tend to look out for the dangers, for the threats. That's why the bad news attract, and that's why the media put these kind of news first. So do you see any chance like this becoming like the major mindset for the people, because it's counterintuitive for them, I guess?
Well, it's counterintuitive for many people. Part of the reason, a large part of the reason it's counterintuitive is because we are totally surrounded. I use this descriptively, and I say we live in a fear soup. And we do. We're just entirely surrounded by fear. So that a friend of mine, friend of your eyes too, says we get good at what we practice. And we practice being afraid. We practice being intimidated. Now, it is true, it's a human weakness. It's kind of a primate level thing to see fears. We double react to fears. If you check the cortisol levels, and it's complicated. But we overreact to fears. Well, bad luck. Here we are. We overreact to fears. Well, that sucks. But I've got a mind. I've got a will. I can train myself. I can pay attention. I can notice when I'm overreacting to fear and move beyond it. It's not particularly natural for humans to get along. If we just go on basic body level instincts, I want more, I want stuff, you got stuff, maybe I should take it from you. Presumably, if evolutionary theory is correct, that's where we were at one time, but we learned not to do it, even though we had instincts that told us to do it. So here we have hundreds of people. How many are hitting each other on the head and taking the other guy's money? None. None. If we do this for 100 years, maybe there'll be a couple instances of crazy guys who get in. But that's it. So we've learned how to evolve past that. And just getting past fear is just another thing we're going to have to do. And it's going to be hard. We just have to do it.
Any other question?
Well, actually, it's not a question, just a comment that about the fear that I always tell everybody that just turn the TV off. You know, we got rid of the TV 7 months ago, and I feel so happy. I actually, my life is perfect. I am not surrounded. I live in the nature, very close to the nature. So I really have to say that I'm not afraid of anything. So, and that makes my life so much better. So when I talk to people from the city, because my parents are like that, they always, you know, they see danger everywhere. So I'm like, just turn the TV off. Once you turn it off, for a month, your life will be completely different. So I think this is the first step, maybe.
That's actually a very good idea. I mean, what you find out when you turn the TV off, or just if you want to do this, just get rid of it. Don't, just get rid of it. And what you find out is the first, I don't know, week or so, you're kind of, 2 months it took? Okay, 2 months. Well, however, it's a number of weeks or a small number of months. You know, you get up and going, where's the TV? What's on? And you feel empty. Like there's a big gap in your life. It's because you're addicted. Okay? You're in withdrawal. But once you find out is when you actually give the TV up and you don't have one, after a while, you don't miss it at all. And you know what you end up doing? Reading books. God forbid, right? But you find out that once you give it up, after the withdrawal period, you really don't miss it at all. Does that comport with, yeah. I mean, you know, those of us who have done it, it's really not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Anything else?
There's one over here, Uri.
Where?
With all the knowledge you have now, what did you change in your life, or how do you live now?
Oh boy. Wow. I have arranged my life as best I can. None of us can, you know, pull it off perfectly. But I'm very grateful that I've been able to arrange my life primarily around things that I love. I very seldom these days have to do things just for the money. And I'll tell you openly, I'm not rich. It's not like I have $10 million in the bank and I can just not think about it. But I have arranged my life pretty well around the things that I love. My family, the work that I do. I spend most of my time either writing things that I think are very important, that are unique and important, or managing the Cryptohippie service that I think is really important. I didn't plan on getting into it. I was kind of dragged into it, but when I realized what was at stake, I thought it was really important. So I have arranged most of my life intentionally around things that I love. And that's probably, I hope that answers your question fairly well.
Okay, one more. Perfect.
Could you explain maybe more about what do you mean by that we don't need rules in our lives? Because the way I see it, to maintain peace, we need at least a basic rule of respect to self-ownership and private property. And
okay.
So elaborate on that.
Like I say, this is a tough one to grok. The things that we have rules over. What we're talking about is limits. This is not okay to do this. This is not okay to do that. Really, when we're talking about national or about laws, where we're talking about, You know, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, you cannot defraud, so on. These are things really that we're willing to use violence over. That's the statement that we're making, is if you start beating up an innocent person, we're willing to use force against you. And that's what law really is. And look, if we need it at a certain point, in a certain place, in a certain time, fine. But in here, the issue is not law. The issue is not an edict or a scribble on a piece of paper made by the great Grand Master. The issue is causing benefit in the world or causing harm in the world. So when we look at it as it's a law, we're bypassing reality. We're bypassing what's actually going on. Here we got a guy who is, whatever, trying to stick somebody else with a knife, to pick a bizarre example. Okay? It's not wrong because it's a law. It's wrong because he's destroying innocent life. And when we think about this, at least in here, we have to think about the actual factors involved, not a scribble on a piece of paper, not the rule that came from whoever, my hero Thomas Jefferson or whomever else. That's really the important thing, because what we're doing is we're taking ourselves away from reality. The world is really complex, but we're really good at dealing with it. And it's better for us to deal with what's really going on rather than a rule on a piece of paper and following that. Does that help? Good.
Okay, so I think we all learned the few next steps, which can be loving people, gratitude, and ditching TV. And I would add one more, which is read this amazing book, The Breaking Dawn. And thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much.